The Takeoff's a brand new series about people who catalyze global citizenship from Johannesburg, South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria to the heart of New York. Follow me, Makhotso Maiko, as I sit down with people who have a story to tell around the globe. It's all exclusive to The Takeoff.
Pastor, we're living in an age that is plagued by the Me Too movement, with a lot of women who are coming forward being victimized. How do we ensure the safety of women in the church without capitalizing on their demise and their vulnerability as well?
It's quite a very sensitive thing right now, especially in the church with what is going on. But in wisdom, I believe the first thing we need to do in the church, the leadership of the church must do, is to place boundaries. If there are boundaries set in place, standards, structures put in place to actually take care of the women in the church or the ladies in the church without exposing them to situations or, things that will come off as an abuse to them, that will go a very long way in putting these things in order. For example, no pastor should counsel a lady without a presence of another lady. There are so many things we can put in place. And of course, speaking from the pastor's point of view, sometimes you get ladies who will write you and say, "Oh, but I want to receive counsel alone. I don't want anybody to be there." Or some people ask, "Oh, can I come and see you privately, because what I want to talk to you about is private." So many times you see that you are trying, as a pastor, you try to put these boundaries, and some of these people, they want to discard them, and they feel, well, if you're not giving me that opportunity to sit with you face to face, to talk about this privately, then you don't care enough to actually listen to me. So at the end of the day, we have to find a balance to this. I know of a pastor friend who said something. He said he has now got hidden cameras in his office, so that when people insist, okay, you have to. So he said, okay, no problem, but you have to take those measures, because at the end of the day, somebody can just wake up one day and just say you raped her or you made advances at her. And the way the world is moving, they will believe her first before they try to look for the proofs. So they will agree with her, they will attack you, even before they see any proofs, any strong proof that this actually took place. But I believe that right now, we should, as a church, put the right foundation, the right structure in place boundaries. For example, someone like me, I've learned to put boundaries. You wouldn't get across to me on the phone.
I need to make this very clear. I don't have Pastor's personal number. I was actually trying to get through to him to finalize today's interview, and one of your assistants made it very clear that I will communicate with you through somebody else, and it's something I respected. Even as somebody who isn't in the church. So I do become surprised that people take offense when you close off those boundaries, when in fact they're good for you. When they are.
The thing is, people do believe that pastors are superhuman beings. And many times when a pastor or a public figure is trying to put these boundaries, they are not putting it because they are strong. They're actually putting it because they are weak. They are actually trying to protect you, the person, and themselves. Because, if they allow those things to continue, they put themselves in situations where they will not be able to handle what comes. And this is where, at the end of the day, the pastor makes a mistake, the public figure, makes a move or approaches a lady in a way he shouldn't. But at the end of the day, nobody sees it in that way, because everybody will say, but you are the pastor, you should have put the standard. So we have to be, personally, I have to be sensitive. I wasn't this strict before with that. And of course, it has cost me a lot of stuff. But these days, I'm very I don't attach my emotions to these boundaries.
It's
It should be there.
That you say that,
Yeah.
especially about attaching emotions, because the thing about the truth is the truth doesn't care about your feelings. And with creating boundaries, unfortunately, bad things have to happen in order for you to create boundaries, because you would think that boundary would not have been crossed in the first place. I want to share my own experience. I had a pastor who came, we were working on a project together, an African abroad project together, and he opened up about him being attracted to me, but the way that he expressed his attraction was so respectable. He was very explicit, and he said, I can't work with you anymore because this is challenging my family, and it's challenging my ability to become a functional stakeholder in the organization. And so he decided to leave the organization that I was running at the time. And I wish we would have men who are this accountable. And I think accountability goes both ways as well. Women as well need to be accountable. You know, when you see a therapist or a doctor, you never see them after hours. You know, you book an appointment. If an appointment is unavailable, it's unavailable. I think women, as much as this is a place of safety, we don't live in the same times. It's a completely different
Everything's
era.
changed now, yeah.
Things have changed. So we need to take matters into our own hands in that regard. You know how we hold it down nice and easy? We are on the takeoff. We just wrapped up a segment about accountability and the safety of women in the church. We're obviously living in a Me Too movement. These are very sensitive times, but I think the conversation needs to be sparked, and it starts with honesty. I think the most important thing, especially with episode 1 of The Takeoff, is for me to always give an unbiased point of view and to leave it to viewers to decide what it is they want to believe. But I think the most important thing, as we'd mentioned before, is the truth doesn't care about your feelings. And I know it's very difficult to absorb, but we need to be able to approach social phenomena in the most truthful manner possible. So yes, we are going to be talking about what it means to be an African in the diaspora and navigating through social systems in the next segment. So stay tuned.
The Takeoff's a brand new series about people who catalyze global citizenship from Johannesburg, South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria to the heart of New York. Follow me, Makhotso Maiko, as I sit down with people who have a story to tell around the globe. It's all exclusive to The Takeoff.
So, welcome back to The Takeoff. We are talking about what it means to be a millennial African abroad. So, Pastor, what has been your experience being in the diaspora? Have you experienced discrimination? Because I think to be as successful as you've been, you must have navigated through quite a lot of prejudice and discrimination as well.
Yeah, of course, I've personally faced discriminatory issues, especially academically. Also, and of course, the daily social aspect of life. When you are not in your country, you are not in your space, you are in someone else's place, you are reminded quite often that you are a foreigner, you know, so it's a bit challenging, but I've learned over time to actually, you know, study on how people view foreigners and then how I can, you know, meander my way through to get what I want. For example, during my studies, my PhD studies, I noticed certain lecturers didn't like the fact that I was young and I was from Africa, you know, and they made things a bit difficult for me. You know, they would allow someone from Europe to just go through certain things, and for me, they have to put me through research upon research, and I could see clearly that they wanted to, you know, delay me somehow, you know. But somehow I made few friends with some of the very liberal lecturers who helped me to, you know, push through certain limitations that they were trying to put in my place. But I believe that it's actually a very sensitive issue when it comes to being an African in a foreign country. We do face racial issues. Being reminded that you are of a black skin and you are not good enough. But for me, it depends on how you see life. I'm quite exposed to the point that I don't actually recognize racism. I only see ignorant people. So when I see someone acting racist towards me, I don't feel that, I don't believe I shouldn't be timid before anyone. When I call someone a racist, it's simply because I've come to realize that the person is discriminatory based on his own, understanding of life and
because a lot
where
of it
people
has
are coming
to do
from.
with ignorance. I've noticed in my experience here, I haven't experienced overt racism. I have experienced prejudice, but most of it has usually been ignorance. That comes from a lack of information. It's just because they don't know. During the weekend I was having lunch with an Anglican reverend, and there was a Turkish lady who wanted to touch my hair, and I had to allow her that opportunity to touch my hair and know what it feels like. Sometimes you literally have to be a guinea pig to help them understand, because a lot of the time they come from a lack of information as well. And I think it's important to transcend things like race. Race is there, it exists, we're different. For example, you and I from different countries. We're from two economic giants of Africa, and there's a lot going on in Africa, and South Africa in particular, with xenophobic attacks. But I think it's difficult to comment on xenophobia now because I'm not there and I don't think I'm as educated, but I think it's the most important thing is we don't seem to be able to have risen above certain things. For example, majority of my team in forming the takeoff is Nigerian, but I don't see them as Nigerian, I see them as colleagues because we're working on a project. So yes, race and ethnicity and nationalities here, but there is a higher transcendent common purpose. And so all of this doesn't matter down here when we're trying to achieve something. So I think that should be the direction we take in ending things like prejudice, even Afrocentric prejudice as well. About being in the diaspora, we have our challenges, but even though we have our challenges, we don't want to go back home. There's this unspoken fear of going back home, knowing very well what the realities are like being in the diaspora. How do we overcome that fear? I was opening up about how I'm going back to South Africa tomorrow, and I'm literally asking myself, I don't know if I have enough to show for me being away and being in Cyprus. It's a scary time. It's a scary time to go back home. But how would you advise Africans to overcome the fear of going back home?
First of all, we need to realize that Africa is actually blessed. Without realizing that Africa is actually blessed, we keep believing the lies we've been told over the years that being in Europe or being in America or Canada, you are better off, and which is a complete lie, because those now outside of Africa in diaspora, they don't want to tell the people in Africa the truth. They paint the picture of, you have to be here to really enjoy life. But there are people in Africa who they have got better lives, better standard of living compared to people here, Africans here. So we need to start, building the value and the policies that should help the renewal of the mind, because the challenge we have in Africa is this concept of that once you're out of Africa, your life gets better. And I believe it's a colonial system that has been put in place to make an average African to believe that somewhere else is better than home. And once we can change this concept by, of course, a program like this, by encouraging subjects in schools to help people see the value, the blessing in their own country, then we'll begin to see gradual, generational change towards the concept of Africa.
And I think there's so much to take away from what you've just said, because it speaks volumes about how we're catalyzing the economic brain drain in Africa. And it's important to go back home. But what's even more important, I think, is to become a lot more innovative with how we reinvest back in Africa. It's no longer just about going back home physically. We can go back home digitally. We can run mentorship programs. I used to run a mentorship program through the African Abroad Network for Africans back home, and I didn't need to be physically there. So I think my biggest problem is I think Africans in the diaspora are just not critical thinkers. We've stopped becoming innovative because we don't see hunger, we don't see starvation, we don't see people hustling on the road. We don't know what that means anymore. And so that's robbed us of our ability to become innovative. How do we become innovative? How do we go back to that? How do we use our experiences in the diaspora to become forerunners of growth back in Africa? How do you think we should do it? At least for me, who's going back home tomorrow.
All right, I think the system is here. I mean, you have to, for you to increase value in any place or make an impact in any nation or country, you need to find a problem and a solution. For example, in my business, I try to find the need in a place, and then I try to find a solution to that need. That's what increases value. People will be willing to spend money and support something that is actually a solution to what they need. So in Africa, for example, we have a lot of needs and desires. People, desire to live a better life. For example, in the construction industry, people would love to use better materials in constructing their buildings. What I do as a businessman, for example, is to find the kind of material that will appeal to, politicians, and through that, I am discovering and I'm also creating a business base for myself and a customer base for myself. So to apply this principle into the African concept, I think we need to come to the point where we discover what our issues and our problems are, and then try to find a solution. The government is not doing that. The politicians are not doing that. But we are in a system that at least works better than what is obtainable right there in Africa. We should be able to go back and try to run for political offices, try to use our contacts, probably if we've made money, try to penetrate into the system, and then offer our intellectual, abilities to help create the right policies that will change our nation and our continent. Absolutely. I believe that this should be the right approach towards this. Yeah.
But the problem with policies and where we are in Africa is that our African leaders are not willing to use, because what we need right now, I think, is to begin to introduce corrective policies, because our policies have been eroded by colonization and corruption as well. Creating a policy that's progressive is not going to help because our foundation is not good. So we need to create literally damage control policies. But the problem with that is our African leaders are not willing to sacrifice that. Anyone who's in office is looking to benefit as much as they can during that time. So I think it's up to you and me to say we're willing to sacrifice and forego of, whether it be wealth, whether it be economic or social capital, we're willing to forego that for the sake of the generation, the future generation as well.
Yeah, and most of the policies are pro-Western. We are independent, but we are still dependent. You have to make policies that pleases the masters, and we have to face the fact that we are independent, but most of our policies must be pro-Western, or else there will be a problem in a country. Most of the issues that Africa, has right now is simply Western influence into our system of government. They still want to be in control They control our money system. Our banks depend on, on them to run. Everything is about, for example, you can't change, foreign currencies directly to your currency. You can't take Nigerian naira to China to buy goods. You have to change the currency into a Western currency before you can,
In the same way, you will never find an African leader in Europe looking at, discord and social cohesion issues. You'll never find them talking about how we advance Europe, but everyone is about advancing Africa. And you almost ask yourself what the motive is. But, I think history has been able to tell us what the motive usually is. There's definitely, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done. As we close off today's wonderful interview, what do you want people to take away from today? Because I know you've not sat down for an interview in years.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you stay focused enough in life, you can achieve anything. Secondly, no matter the words spoken over your life, no matter what, the challenges surrounding you, you can always build something to overcome those words and those challenges. And thirdly, I don't believe in time factor. I believe you can achieve anything and anything without any time limitation. Just make up your mind to go for it. Go for it. Don't let time, limit you in any way. The right time to do that new thing is now, not tomorrow. That's all.
Wow, don't be limited by time, do the right thing and rise above adversity. And of course, you've got to take off. It's been an absolute pleasure sitting down with you. Thank you so much for allowing me to sit down and, literally put your life on a magnifying glass for a moment. So I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I really, really appreciate it. You know how we hold it down nice and easy? This is the takeoff as we have concluded our interview with Pastor Dr. Professor Anyi Obi. We've put him on a magnifying glass. And if you would like to find out more about the takeoff, follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are active and interactive on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all of the other trending social media platforms. Remember, all we give is unbiased information, and we always give the other side of the story as well. We're all about catalyzing global citizenship and what it means to be an African in the diaspora. See you in the next episode of The Takeoff.
The Takeoff's a brand new series about people who catalyze global citizenship from Johannesburg, South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria to the heart of New York. Follow me, Makhotso Maiko, as I sit down with people who have a story to tell around the globe. It's all exclusive to The Takeoff.
Okay, even though we've wrapped up the takeoff, we quickly want to give you some exclusive access to behind the scenes. So we're actually going to ask Pastor Obi some quick and quirky fun facts about him that very few, if any of you, even know about. So, Pastor, quick one, fun facts. What is your favorite food?
Plantain and beans, porridge, plantain and beans.
Okay. What is your favorite non-native Nigerian food? In Cyprus, so Turkish, yes. Kebab, is kebab not a thing?
Not kebab, makana mata.
Makana mata?
Makana mata, what's it called? Ezich makana mata.
Is it like a barbecue? Is it
no,
mangal?
It's macaroni, yes, macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
Macaroni and cheese with broccoli.
Oh wow, like a nice broccoli. Okay, that's great. What do you enjoy doing outside of ministerial work? So I'm a little bit disappointed because you did say you've only been to the beach about 3 times.
3 times, twice.
What do you do outside of work, outside of ministry?
Well, outside of ministry, I go to school.
Pastor, we're talking about fun stuff.
All right. Outside of ministry or school, I just love to travel. You know,
Travel is
go
a given.
somewhere, just stay in a nice hotel, you know, go swimming in a hotel.
In a hotel,
Yeah, in a
away
swimming
from
pool.
Cyprus.
Yeah, away from
Rich
Cyprus.
people problems. You see, if you can afford that lifestyle, the soft life, of course you won't have to worry. So now we know Pastor enjoys traveling outside, flying, probably first class, and, you know, swimming in a very fancy hotel with all the privacy because, you know, that's Pastor. If you weren't in ministry or architecture, what would be your dream job? Or what would you be doing now if
I
you
would have
weren't?
been in the army.
Wow.
Yeah, I love the force. Anything that has to do with discipline and ranks, I love the army.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Which African president, living or deceased, would you want to sit down with? And what would you tell them?
Muammar Gaddafi.
Wow, I was actually
Yeah.
talking about Gaddafi just yesterday. Fascinating.
I believe he was the best, and so far he's still the best ever.
In terms of
from a-
wanting to create the one
the
currency,
one
as
currency,
well.
the gold-backed currency for Africa, the independence, economic independence of Africa. I believe that's what we need because we have everything in Africa. We can trade amongst ourselves and create one unique currency, you know, and trade with it. I believe that's been the best design for an independent Africa. But you know, they took him out.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Quicker than we could even pick up the pieces, because nobody seems to have picked up the pieces and run that narrative, that progressive narrative. Wow. I'm speaking of public figures, but this one is public, reincarnate, outside metaphysics. If Jesus came back tomorrow, what would you want to tell him? Or what would you want to ask him?
Why he allowed me to go through so many challenges?
No, that's a real thing.
Yeah,
That's real.
Why he allowed me to go through certain stuff in life, and I mean, I'm not going to ask him because I'm upset or angry, but I would love to understand why he allowed so many things to happen when he could have stopped me or stopped whatever, you know.
But is it okay to ask? There were certain things you know now that you probably might not have known had you not gone through that.
Yeah.
So perhaps maybe it's also worth looking at it that way. As gosh, some experiences are very, very daunting and terrible, but the amount of refining that comes out of that, you've probably even come out a diamond in that regard. So, but interesting nonetheless. Last but not least, what is your current favorite non-worship song? A Davido, a Wizkid.
Let It Be. Let It Be. By what was it? Let It Be by, I forgot.
Is he an African artist or
No,
is
not
he?
an African artist.
Oh, he's European.
European. What? This group.
Oh, a group.
Let it be, let it be.
But that sounds worship-like, Pastor. I'm talking like gagang gang gagang gang 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 gang.
All right.
gang, gang.
I love who now? I don't like Davido.
Okay.
I don't like Wizkid.
Tell it like it is. Ish. And these might be people I'm interviewing in the future, Pastor. Ish.
I don't like their music because one thing that that attracts me to music is content. I just don't feel. I don't have anything against their music.
And that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
But I don't feel they have the kind of content that there is this South African song.
Which one?
DJ KG. Don't forget where you are going. Don't forget the way back home. You know
I
the
don't
song?
even know the
You don't know
song.
the
I'm
song?
so
Oh my
embarrassed to.
goodness.
Oh, wow.
Well,
That's wonderful. Okay, but it's an upbeat song.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
definitely.
great. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Fine. So, those were all fun and quirky facts about Pastor Dr. Professor Anyi Obi. I hope you've gotten to know him. To all you curious viewers, guys, he's there. I have presented him to you. I hope you are happy and satisfied. Don't ask us any questions. We've addressed everything. We know his favorite food. We know what he does outside of ministry. He does not go to the beach, so you won't find him there. But it's been such a pleasure having you again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So as we close off on the takeoff with your one and only Makhotso Maiko, thank you so much for tuning in, and continue keeping in touch and following us on all of our social media platforms. Keep it global and continue being global citizens. Thank you.